Amazing transformation. Single mom saves 25 freezing bikers, discover the incredible 200 who sue. Rachel's heart raced as she peered out the frost-laden window, the howling wind wrapping around her small home like a cruel hand. It wasn't just any winter night. It was a frigid battleground for survival. At 34, she felt the years of hard work as a nurse weighing heavily on her shoulders, none more so than today. The clinic she had devoted herself to had closed, and with 2 kids depending on her, worry stirred in the pit of her stomach. Just as she settled in with her children, planning their meager dinner of soup and bread, a sudden commotion outside jolted her. 25 bikers stood shivering in her driveway, their battered jackets bespeaking endless miles on the road. The sight struck her with urgency. Could she turn them away? Unease crept over her. The house barely provided enough warmth for her own children. But her heart pushed against her anxieties, urging her to help. "Come in," she yelled, her voice slicing through the tension outside. As the riders staggered into her home, their chilly breaths dissipated into the warm air, and she wrapped them in the softest blankets she could muster. The aroma of the soup simmered in the background, an incongruous comfort amidst her brewing storm of worries. She watched as they gathered around the fire, rugged faces lighting up as they shared stories of broken roads and unrelenting perseverance. Something stirred within her at their tales, sparks igniting dreams she'd long buried beneath her anxieties. Before the warmth could seep deep enough to ease her mind, a sharp knock shattered the stillness. Mr. Clark, businessman, sharp, and all too familiar in his smoothness. The dread that had been lurking behind Rachel's ribcage surged, tightening her throat as she opened the door. He stepped across the threshold, his presence consuming more of her space than she felt it ought. "I bought your property," he declared, words dripping like an icy knife. Fear twisted her insides. Her home was everything, it was all she had left. The shock resonated through her, a bell tolling doom. Rachel's mind raced as a whirlpool of thoughts pulled her under. How could she fight this? Mr. Clark's words echoed, threading themselves into her nightmare. What would happen to her children? Suddenly, the bikers, eyes flaring with resolve, leaned in closer. They were moved by her kindness, sensing the struggle behind her weary facade. They murmured between themselves, "We can't let this happen." The strength in their voices fueled Rachel's desperation. Could this ragged group of misfits be the answer to her prayers? Before she could lean into that flickering hope, another wave of uncertainty crashed over her. The warmth of connection morphed into a potent fuel for fear. She felt herself caught between the welcoming aura of her new companions and the icy clutches of impending loss. Would they truly stand by her? The weight of her situation felt insurmountable, yet their determination piqued something within her. Her own resilience began to stir. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The room buzzed with energy. Plans are sketched with frantic urgency. Each outline of a strategy constricted the looming shadow of her fears, but she was petrified nonetheless. They were rallying for a fight, for her children's safety, for the place she had tirelessly turned into a sanctuary. Yet unease knotted in her gut. How could she confront the likes of Mr. Clark without losing herself? The storm around them raged outside, mirroring the tempest of her internal struggle. Rachel stood on the precipice, a woman on the brink, each ticking moment a reminder that she was far from finished. Would this unlikely band help her navigate the treacherous path ahead, or would she crumble under the weight of injustice and fear for her fragile future? The evening wore on, and the fire crackled with fresh intensity as Rachel steeled herself for the inevitable confrontation with Mr. Clark. Her mind turned with every story shared and plan drafted amidst the bikers. It ignited something within her, a flicker of courage long extinguished by doubt and the constant demands of motherhood. These strangers had become allies, avatars of a resolve she thought she'd lost. She looked around the room, noticing how her children had cozied up next to the writers, their laughter mingling with the stories of daring adventures and daunting challenges. It had been a long time since she felt an atmosphere like this one, rich with companionship and warmth. Could she draw from this shared energy to empower her own fight, her own voice? For so long, she'd muted herself, defaulting to the needs of others while her own heart battled against the chill of despair. Where do we start? Rachel found herself asking, surprising even herself. Those words triggered something. It was as if a dam had broken. They quickly gathered around the table, strategizing, voices overlapping and ideas clashing, igniting passion that filled the small confines of her home. One biker, an old soul with a fierce gleam in his eyes named Hank, stepped forward. "You've got the heart of a tiger, Rachel. You just need to channel that fire. Clark thinks he can intimidate you, but it's time you show him what you've got." His words hung in the air, electrifying. Rachel felt a jolt of empowerment shoot through her, but there was still fear gnawing at her subconscious. How could she confront him when he already wielded the power of ownership over her and her home? She was treading on dangerous ground. Would bringing this band of bikers into her battle make her stronger or more vulnerable? That night, she laid awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling as swirling thoughts spun through her mind. She felt the tug of motherhood and obligation weighing heavily against her heart's desire to reclaim her autonomy. For too long, she had been just a nurse, a single mom caught up in the relentless cycles of work and home. This fight, however, was about something greater, a deeper calling to reclaim her life and her sanctuary. Yet, each flicker of hope battled with shadows of doubt. What if their effort was in vain? What if Mr. Clark used his resources to crush them? The looming threat twisted in her thoughts like a serpent, wrapping itself around her determination. Days blended into nights as adrenaline fueled her resolve. She dedicated herself to understanding real estate laws, poring over online resources and collecting documents as she prepared for the inevitable showdown. Supported by the bikers, she created an action plan. This fueled her spirit but left her more exposed. Rachel found a new rhythm. She wasn't just a nurse or a mother. She was a determined fighter, reclaiming her own story. Over the next few days, the bikers became her support network. They helped her draft letters and set up meetings. With every step, Rachel's confidence grew. She practiced her communication, her negotiation tactics, and slowly dismantled the walls of isolation that had confined her. One afternoon, while diving into a particularly convoluted document, she found a clause that sparked a revelation. This isn't just about property. It's about power, my power. I can fight this on my terms, she thought with renewed belief. The pivotal moment soon approached. The meeting with Mr. Clark would reveal how far she'd come. But as she sat in the small local cafe, waiting for him to arrive, doubt once again wrestled with determination. Would she truly stand her ground, face him with unwavering strength? As Rachel glanced out the window, preparing for the confrontation that would either shape her future or drown her in defeat, a voice echoed in her mind. "You've got the heart of a tiger." She knew now that it was time to unleash that roar. And as the cafe door swung open, a figure stepped inside, carrying the weight of uncertainty and impending resolution. Rachel felt her heartbeat quicken as Mr. Clark sauntered into the cafe, his presence demanding attention. Dressed impeccably, exuding confidence and authority, he was the embodiment of everything she had spent years avoiding: confrontation and conflict. But this was different. This time, she felt a flicker of resistance igniting within her. As he approached, she mentally rehearsed her opening line, a strategy she had played out countless times. This meeting was not solely about reclaiming her home. It was about reclaiming her voice. "Mr. Clark, thank you for meeting me," she began, her voice steady despite the storm churning within. He offered a condescending smile, the kind that brought previously dormant insecurities bubbling to the surface. S cut to the chase. You're in over your head. You know that, right? His tone dripped with superiority, but she saw it as a test. No longer would she shy away from accusations. With all due respect, I have done my homework. I understand both my rights and your responsibilities, Mr. Clark, she replied, surprised by the strength that surged through her voice. The words were not merely assertions. They felt like a grounding truth. As they settled into their discussion, her confidence grew. With every point she made, she felt her previous doubts falling away like ashes. Clark challenged her various claims, trying to tear apart her newfound knowledge. Yet, with every rebuttal, Rachel found more conviction in her arguments. She stood her ground, bolstered by the support of the bikers, whose energy still swelled within her like a protective shield. She imagined them behind her, urging her on. Listen, Rachel, you don't want to go down this path. You have children to think about, he said, attempting to play on her vulnerabilities. She recognized this tactic for what it was, a frustration tactic designed to corner her into submission. What I want is to secure a stable future for my children, and that includes this home, she stated, allowing her resolve to color her words. For every fear he tried to exploit, she countered with a declaration of her intent. As the conversation meandered toward an impasse, Rachel noticed a glimmer of irritation pass over his face. A realization struck her. She was not only holding her own, but she was also gaining ground. The woman he expected to intimidate was evolving, and it frightened him. The tension in the air thickened. Still, she pressed on. I believe we can negotiate a settlement that works for both parties. But make no mistake, I will not back down. She felt lithe and fierce, as if she had shed a layer of helplessness. He staggered, momentarily caught off guard, his facade flickering. She sensed a moment of vulnerability and opening, and in that instant, she decided to leverage it. I'm not come here as a victim. If anything, I am prepared to fight for what is mine, and I won't hesitate to escalate if necessary. Her words hung in the air, reverberating between them. The realization settled in. Rachel understood she was no longer just defending herself. She was asserting her reality, taking ownership of the path ahead. Her transformation wasn't just about housing laws or negotiations. It was about reclaiming her identity. Then, as if to signify a shift, Mr. Clark leaned back, arms crossed defensively. Let us not get ahead of ourselves, he replied. Try to regain control over the situation. But she felt that a path laid before her, unrestrained and full of possibilities. Then let us discuss what's next, she said, determination pouring from her. As they shifted into a tense negotiation, Rachel could feel the energy in the room transform. Just as she began laying out her terms and conditions, a sudden noise broke through the focus. The cafe door swung open and a commotion stirred in the corner, drawing her attention away from the intensity of the meeting. Within that distraction, the stakes changed again, and Rachel recognized that what lay ahead could either build her momentum or threaten to upend everything she had just accomplished. And in that moment, she understood she was not just fighting for herself, but for every unvoiced struggle hidden beneath the surface. The door swung closed once more. She had to remain focused. There was too much at stake. And yet, the next moment could redefine her journey entirely. Would she take that leap, or would Clark reestablish his dominion? Rachel's attention snapped back to the cafe table, the noise receding as she tightened her focus on Mr. Clark. The distraction had unnerved her momentarily, but it also ignited a deeper resolve. No longer was she a passive figure waiting for answers. She was an active player in this game, one who held the cards tighter than she realized. Let us refocus, she stated, her voice steadier now. She wouldn't allow him to sidetrack her with intimidation or distractions. The sensation of empowerment coursed through her, a welcome contrast to the years spent shying away from authority. In those few moments of hesitation, she had learned something vital: the power of presence, of claiming the space around her. Mr. Clark straightened, sensing her shift in posture and tone. Okay, Rachel, let us hear what you propose. His tone now bore a hint of begrudging respect. As Rachel laid out her terms, she meticulously recalled every detail she had gathered in her research. The laws regarding tenant rights, the requirements for eviction notices, and the community resources available to her. She presented her case with clarity and confidence, each point a testament to her newfound strength. She was building a narrative where she was no longer the victim, but a formidable advocate for her family. But she couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling at the back of her mind. Was she actually prepared to take it all the way if necessary? The prospect of a legal fight loomed like a shadow, threatening to eclipse all her progress. Would she fumble under pressure, or had she really transformed? Clark pushed back, using subtlety to undermine her assertions. "You misunderstand the position you're in," he said, leaning closer. "This ISNTA game you want to play, I can make it very unpleasant for you." Rachel felt a flicker of doubt flicker back through her. She could almost sense the weight of his words attempting to pull her down again. But instead of folding, she inhaled deeply, grounding herself in the moment. "Mr. Clark," she countered, "you may hold the upper hand in the traditional sense, but this isn't solely about property. It's about families, futures, and the lengths a mother will go to protect her children." Her voice resonated with passion, each word reflecting her commitment. The room crackled with tension as she watched Clark's expression shift, his disbelief masked by a veneer of superiority. Rachel could feel the stakes rise higher, as if she and Clark were suddenly sparring in a ring, each move calculated. She was learning that while the legal terrain might feel foreign, her instincts were sharper than she had allowed herself to believe. The failure of her former self felt like a distant memory, eclipsed by the determination coursing through her. It was not ambition she felt, but a sacred resolve to fight for what mattered most. The chaos outside lingered at the edges of her mind, but she pushed it back. If she could hold her focus, she could steer this meeting toward a resolution. "I'm willing to negotiate," she offered, tempering her tone, but keeping her gaze unwavering. "Let us find a solution that respects my family's needs while addressing your concerns." With steely determination, they moved deeper into the discussion, each counter made with calculated precision. Rachel realized this wasn't merely a defensive strategy. She was crafting an assertive blueprint for her family's future. Yet, as the conversation reached a critical juncture, Clark's demeanor shifted dramatically. "You think you can play hardball with me?" he challenged, the mask slipping momentarily. Rachel suddenly felt the weight of uncertainty creeping in again. "Perhaps hardball isn't the approach," she said, her mind racing, "but I will not be bullied or silenced." She noticed a fleeting flash of respect in his eyes, mixed with irritation. For the first time, he appeared unsure, on his back foot. With that, Rachel understood she needed to up the ante. The stakes were much higher, and now was not the time to falter. As they continued to discuss potential agreements, the outer commotion rose again, louder, uncloaking an undeniable urgency. Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that whatever transpired next would change the course of her fight forever. Could the chaos outside be the catalyst for her ultimate victory, or would it challenge the fragile progress she had made? Either way, Rachel was ready to confront whatever emerged. Rachel felt the tension shift, a piercing moment cutting through the heated atmosphere. It was impossible to ignore the growing clamor outside. The world beyond the cafe suddenly felt more urgent and chaotic than the battle unfolding at the table. Her focus, though tested, remained laser-sharp. Mr. Clark might have underestimated her resolve, but she wouldn't falter. "Rachel," he began, his smirk returning as if to regain control. "You cannot expect to sway me with emotional appeals. This is business, not feelings." His words danced mockingly in her mind, adding to the white noise outside. She forced herself to breathe deeply, absorbing the noise, weaving it into her strategy rather than letting it distract her. Clark needed reminding that her family's fight was rooted in reality, not just sentimentality. "I understand," she replied, her voice steady. "But consider this, your business affects lives. People are not just numbers on a balance sheet. I think it's time we both acknowledge that. As she spoke, Rachel felt the edges of her previous self start to meld with the woman. She was becoming fierce, unwavering, and determined to fight for her children and others like them. The years spent cowering felt like weights falling off her shoulders. She was finally ready to stand tall. Clark leaned back, fingers running over his chin, contemplating her words. Perhaps he wasn't used to having his authority challenged, and that unnerved him. She seized the moment. Let's talk about a solution, one that keeps both of our interests intact. Rachel was not merely negotiating for herself anymore. The knowledge she had amassed about tenant rights and community support surged through her like a tidal wave, fueling her determination. This was her moment to navigate the treacherous waters of landlords and legal jargon. And despite the underlying fear, she felt a reservoir of strength bubble up from within. Propose your solution, then, he taunted, a flicker of skepticism still present in his eyes. It dawned on Rachel that confidence wasn't just about not feeling fear. It was about moving forward despite it. I propose that we explore options for reducing rent, while also considering a fair notice period for future increases. There must be a way to ensure both your returns remain intact, while also allowing families like mine the chance to thrive. As she spoke, she noted the shift in Clark's posture. His initial dismissiveness was softening. He engaged now, eyebrows furrowing in thought instead of amusement. Rachel could feel the room change, the very atmosphere thickening with possibility. She was not only asking for a fair outcome, she was rewriting the narrative that had long kept her in the shadows. Every word she spoke was emboldened by the memories of her struggle as a mother, a survivor, a fighter. As they delved deeper into specifics, Rachel picked up on Clark's hesitations, his guarded language unwinding. It was as if she were defusing a ticking bomb, carefully guiding him through the complexities of her proposal. The thrill of her newfound assertiveness jolted her with adrenaline. Just then, there came a loud crash from outside, causing both Rachel and Clark to glance instinctively towards the cafe door. The chaos heightened, glass shattering, followed by shouts and urgent footsteps. The world outside was crumbling, making it impossible to ignore the tension brewing just beyond their negotiation. "What the hell is happening out there?" Clark exclaimed, momentarily losing his cool. Rachel's mind raced. The unsettling energy had shifted into raw urgency. Whatever it is, it's a reminder that we, like those people, face struggles that extend beyond this conversation. People need stability. Let's not lose sight of the humanity involved here. Clark's expression darkened again, doubt seeping back in. Her boldness was unsettling him. Yet, at that moment, Rachel realized she hadn't just taken control of the conversation. She was actively shaping her future and the futures of others. As they stood on the brink of what could be a breakthrough, or breakdown, Rachel knew the fight was far from over. A voice firmly rooted in her newfound determination could shape not only her destiny, but that of her wildly trembling community. What would emerge from the cacophony outside, and how would it influence her next steps? The answer loomed large. Rachel felt the weight of uncertainty thickening around her like an oppressive fog. The sounds from outside surged, filling the cafe with an insistent reminder of the lives intertwined with her negotiation. The commotion broke through Rachel's concentration, drawing her mind away from Mr. Clark's reluctant consideration of her proposal. Yet she fought to keep her focus, determined not to let the chaos distract her from the potential breakthrough she felt on the cusp of. "Listen," Rachel said, her voice rising above the noise without an ounce of hesitation. "This isn't just about numbers or contracts. You can see that firsthand. Families are struggling right now, and if we can find a way to communicate that to your stakeholders, everyone, your investors, your tenants will stand to benefit in the end." Clark's eyes narrowed, but Rachel noticed an underlying concern creeping in. Perhaps he was beginning to comprehend the broader implications beyond his spreadsheets. The thought sent a rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. She decided to be bolder, to wrap her argument not in delicate fabrications, but in stark reality. "Mr. Clark," Imagine waking up every day in fear of losing your home. Picture the people who count on you to make the right calls, not just for profit, but for survival. A business built on compassion can stand the test of time far better than one solely driven by greed. His expression remained closed, but she could see the subtle twitch of his brow to tell that her words were striking a hidden chord. She needed to push just a little further. If we can agree on a temporary reduction, I'll mobilize the tenants affected to support your business publicly. They will acknowledge your commitment to community welfare, attracting potential future business partners who prioritize ethical practices. You gain reputation, we gain security. For a fleeting moment, Rachel caught a glimpse of doubt flitting across Clark's confident facade. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. What if he rejected her proposal outright? She would not only fail herself, but also the family she had come to represent. However, she realized that even contemplating such failure put her in a position of power. She was finally capable of altering her fate. Isn't it worth considering? Rachel pressed, a spark of determination igniting deep within her. Clark shifted again, impatience flickering in his responses. You think your suggestions can just be implemented because you want them? There are laws to follow, contracts and play laws, she interrupted, that can be bent in the name of goodwill, and contracts that can be mutually renegotiated. Her voice crackled with conviction, steeling herself against the tide of rejection threatening to engulf her. Just as Clark began to open his mouth to respond, another clamor erupted outside, rising in intensity like a storm brewing on the horizon. An electric charge filled the air, and Rachel caught a glimpse of frantic figures running past the glass, a shadowy representation of the chaos that surrounded not only this place, but her world. What were they doing? Clark asked, brow furrowed deeply. With growing urgency, Rachel chose to redirect the energy of uncertainty. That is the struggle of people like my family, Mr. Clark. They're fighting for their very existence, just as I'm fighting in this moment. If we can find common ground amid a crumbling system, we can create a model that others will want to emulate. Her heart pounded in her chest as she observed Clark's expression shift again. No longer was he just a man sitting across the table. He was a pivotal player in this unfolding narrative. Would he see the possibilities as Rachel did? As the chaos outside began to filter through the walls in fractured silhouettes and muffled voices, Rachel realized there was no going back. This wasn't just about numbers on a ledger. It was about redefining the parameters of success itself. In this clutch moment, she pressed on, daring to traverse into the unknown. The time had come to face not only Clark, but also her conception of herself. Was she merely a tenant or something far greater? With resolve bubbling up, she was ready to stake her claim. But what if this unforeseen urgency outside shattered her ambitions entirely? Would her transformation face its most significant test yet? The answer lingered ominously, and she was determined to uncover it. Rachel's heart raced as the din outside escalated. She could hear the distant sounds of shouting and the rumble of heavy footsteps, echoing the urgency filling the cafe. It was a symphony of chaos that acted as both a terrifying backdrop and a fierce motivator. Rachel glanced at Clark, whose expression had hardened again, a fortress against the tide of desperation she was attempting to convey. How can you sit there and ignore what is happening outside? Rachel challenged, the flood of adrenaline dispelling any lingering doubts in her mind. Those people are fighting for their right to exist in a system that relentlessly squeezes them for profit. They deserve better. You have an opportunity to provide that better. And you know it. Clark's composure faltered for a blink. He seemed to contemplate the rows of faces shifting in the shadows outside. Maybe for the first time, he saw the solemn stakes of the conversation unfolding. But she understood that his hesitance stemmed from years of focusing on numbers rather than human lives. Rachel, it's not that simple, he replied, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. This is business, and business operates on the principle of exchange. There's a cost to every decision, Mr. Clark, Rachel said, her voice steady now, unyielding. You know better than anyone that the price of inaction can sometimes be the strangest kind of loss, the loss of humanity. She took a deep breath, willing herself to move beyond the palpitating fear in her chest. The survival of so many relied on her ability to navigate this fraught landscape. Every heartbeat pulsed with purpose. She was staking not only her future, but those of countless others. "Let me help you see," she continued, leaning forward as she gathered her thoughts. "You're afraid that lowering prices will hurt your bottom line. But think ahead, what happens when your tenants, galvanized by your commitment, flourish? You won't just maintain your revenue. You'll create a legacy. Businesses that foster goodwill prosper long-term." A flicker of understanding crossed Clark's features as he seemed to wrestle with his assumptions. Yet, the walls he constructed around his rationale were not so easily dismantled. "All I'm asking for is a chance to show you how impactful this can be. Not just in dollars and cents, but as a model of success that humanizes a merciless system." Rachel paused, her gaze locked onto his. "What you don't realize is that you're at a crossroads. If you turn away from this opportunity, someone else will get hurt." A nerve in Edwin's jaw tightened, and for the first time, she saw him unsure. This mere moment of reflection felt monumental. Yet Rachel sensed a gravitational pull weighing him down, a fear, perhaps, that had ruled him for years. "Mr. Clark, this isn't just about politics or profit, it's about purpose," she emphasized, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "Dare to reframe your vision of success and find out who you can become with that choice. Let this be a moment that defines not just your business strategy, but you as a person." As Clark remained silent, Rachel couldn't help but wonder if the weight of her testimony was beginning to shift the tectonic plates of his perspective. Did he feel the urgency coursing through him, too? Or was he still grappling with the seductive allure of self-preservation? The cacophony outside swelled to a fever pitch. A heavy wave of uncertainty clawed at her insides. What if she had placed everything on this? A renewed heaviness of responsibility hovered like a cloud above her, threatening to drown her new ambition. Suddenly, Clark shot upright, hands gripping the table's edge. "I can't just change everything overnight. There are too many implications." Every instinct told hers to press harder, to break through that last barrier of skepticism. But she caught herself. This was not merely a battle of wills. It was a shared moment of humanity trembling on a precipice. She had to let him guide his own transformation, even if it meant taking a step back, but in that silence punctuated by the chaos. Outside, a flicker of hope ignited. Rachel knew that she had stepped into the light of her potential, no matter the outcome. She was no longer just another anonymous voice amongst the crowd. As the storm raged beyond the cafe's walls, Rachel confronted a pivotal realization. Her fears of inadequacy were beginning to fade. If she could steer Mr. Clark toward a greater good, might she also lead herself into the person she was meant to be? "What would it take, then?" she whispered, embracing the gravity of her inquiry. Would this moment challenge the very fabric of her existence? Clark exhaled, his breath shaky, the tension in the air palpable. Rachel slid back in her chair, heart hammering as she awaited his response. The chaos from the crowd outside surged again, and they both instinctively leaned closer, straining to hear the muffled cries for justice mingled with the sound of chanting voices. Each utterance resonated deep within her, adding urgency to the pressing silence between them. "It's not just the business I worry about," Clark finally said, his gaze heavy with the weight of unspoken worries. "If I make these changes, if I take that risk, I could lose everything. The board won't approve. I could jeopardize everything I've built for my family." Rachel felt the raw fear pulsing from him. He was no different from the countless others out there, fighting for their livelihoods and dignity. The realization struck her. The human experience was not only a fight for survival, but also a struggle against vulnerabilities that lay hidden beneath the surface of ambition. "Edwin, I understand," Rachel said softly, "but what defines you is not what you have built, but what you stand for. If we turn our backs on the needs of those outside, we risk becoming part of the very system we criticize. Isn't protecting your family about ensuring a future for them? Just future? That question hung between them, a heavy challenge. She wondered if he felt the tension stretching their moral compass, piercing his corporate armor. The very essence of his business's tendrils reaching into cold, harsh environments was threatened by stagnation. "I need time to think," he finally muttered, glancing down as if clouds of uncertainty had eclipsed his mind. Rachel frowned. She was all too familiar with the allure of procrastination, the slow poison of indecision that could dull urgency. "I respect that, but time is not something we have in abundance. If people are willing to stand up and be counted, don't you owe it to them and yourself to do the same?" The cafe felt stifling as she leaned more closely toward him, her voice firm but compassionate. "This is your opportunity, Edwin. You can make waves that could ripple out into something transformative. What will it take for you to embrace that?" A silence enveloped them again, a vacuum that sucked the noise from the outside. In that moment, Rachel felt a shift deep within. Uncertainty stoked the furnace of her determination even further. This was the pivotal moment she had anticipated, the juncture where her ideals met the harsh realities of the business world. Clark shifted uncomfortably, his hands now resting on the table, fingers tapping a nervous rhythm. Rachel's heart raced. Was this the breakthrough she had been striving for? Was she willing to relinquish the power of her voice if it meant losing the fight? "Maybe I could lower prices temporarily," he said, his voice quieter now, as though testing the waters. "But it will be a calculated risk. I need to figure out how to reconcile it with my board and secure their support." Rachel felt a rush of adrenaline. "That's it. This is your starting point." She couldn't afford to hold back her excitement. "Let's outline a plan that articulates not just the financial metrics, but also the ethical imperatives tied to it. Show them it's not only in line with the company's future, but a moral obligation." But as she spoke, doubt squeezed at the edges of her confidence. What if the board rejected him, the ripple effect, leaving Clark cornered, and her responsibilities mounting? She departnered her ambitions with the uncertainty of his transformation. In that critical moment, Rachel confronted a personal dilemma. Was she willing to stake so much on someone else's decision? How could she encourage change without losing sight of her identity and goals? The air pulsed with tension from the clash of their conflicting fears. The outside noise blended into the static of her thoughts as she faced the reality of her existence. This could be the turning point, echoing through her journey into a deeper understanding of her impact. Clark turned back to her. Recognition marked his expression. "Okay, let us map it out," he said, voice firmer. "But it has to be framed in a way that will get them on board." For a fleeting moment, Rachel felt on the precipice of an undeniable transformation of her own. She could not only be a voice, but an architect of change. But just as hope flickered, a loud crash from outside jolted them both, and Rachel's heart sank. What if this opportunity crumbled before her very eyes? "Let us start building the framework," she urged him, the storm of emotions raging both outside and within. What they initiated here could change everything, but at what cost? Determined, she leaned in closer, ready to pen the first words of a new era. But as she prepared to speak, a chilling realization struck her. The chaos outside was escalating, and she knew the struggle for progress was far from over. What would she do when the storm finally broke through? Clark's eyes hardened with resolve as he leaned forward, a flicker of determination igniting amid the tumult outside. Rachel felt the energy shift. It wasn't just about the business anymore. This was personal. A sense of urgency thrummed through her, aligning their fates as they set out to craft a plan. She was ready to put everything on the line, using her voice to help Clark navigate the uncharted waters of corporate ethics. "Let us sketch out key points first," she suggested, pulling out her notebook and a pen. The action grounded them, drawing their focus towards the potential impact of their choices rather than the chaos around them. He nodded, chewing at his lip, glancing over her shoulder as if he could see the weight of the crowd pressing against the glass. "Right? First, we need to emphasize our commitment to affordability without sacrificing quality. That is crucial for the board. Rachel contemplated that. What about making it a part of our corporate identity? Highlighting how it reflects our values could resonate with consumers, too. It's a win-win, but not just in words. We need to actively show our commitment. Clark opened his mouth to speak, then hesitated. Rachel could see the wheels turning in his mind. I think my board might push back about changing our pricing strategy. They'll argue against it. His voice was now laced with anxiety. Then we have to prepare for that. Anticipate their objections and have responses ready, Rachel countered, her own nerves hidden under layers of strategy. Would it be enough? Every move she was suggesting felt like balancing on a tightrope. One misstep could lead to disaster not just for Clark, but for her and her career. Let us create a detailed outline showing potential revenue impacts, consumer retention, and build something that aligns with their profit margin concerns, he said, starting to gather momentum. We could introduce a pilot program in select stores. Yes, and include metrics to showcase the positive community impact. If we frame it correctly, it becomes a part of our brand narrative. Encouragement surged within her. With their collective expertise, they were not just shaping a business plan, they were forging a new ethos. Yet, just beneath the surface, doubts sloshed like restless water. Was it enough? Could they shift the paradigm from profit first to people first? Let us also incorporate testimonials from those affected by our prices, the families, the individuals, Rachel pressed. This isn't just numbers. It's real lives we're discussing. Clark was nodding more rapidly now, but a flicker of apprehension clouded his expression. And what if they don't care about that? What if it's just another business decision for them? Rachel leaned back, her heart pounding again. She had to dig deeper, and it was time to confront herself. Then we find a way to make them care. We have to connect our business goals with human stories. We can turn the numbers into narratives they cannot ignore. And if it backfires? If they see it as weakness, not strength? His voice was low, almost inaudible. That question hung heavily, its weight anchoring Rachel to her own fears. What if everything she was advocating for was brushed aside? What if their collaboration blew up, leaving her reputation in tatters? Taking a steadying breath, she met his gaze. If we back down, we fail everyone out there. We owe it to them to be brave. Every decision creates ripples. Let us make sure ours create a wave. Clark's eyes sparkled with a hesitant belief, and for the first time since they began this journey, he appeared resolute. Okay, Rachel, let us put this plan to work then, together. But in the pit of her stomach lurked unshakable fear about their next steps. The conversation with the board loomed larger than ever, but her resolve was crystallizing. This was not just his fight. It was hers. As they began drafting their plan, the echoes of the outside chaos grew louder, threatening to drown out their voices and their hopes. Was their determination sufficient to rise above the clamor? They were stepping into a storm, but the hope for transformation flickered like a fragile candle in the wind. And as Clark turned the page of her notes, drawing lines between ideas, Rachel sensed a profound truth. They were on the brink of something monumental. But could they stand together against the impending storm of criticism and doubt? The moment of decision was upon them. Would they embrace their vision, or would fear pull them apart at the seams? Days turned into weeks as Rachel and Clark navigated the intricate waters of their collaboration, each meeting reinforcing her burgeoning confidence and professionalism. Each time they proposed a solution or tackled a concern, Rachel felt her previous self, the doubt-ridden single mom, overwhelmed by life, drifting further away. She was now a partner in an evolving enterprise, wielding her voice with newfound authority and purpose. As momentum grew, the first steps toward implementing their principle of compassion were met with various reactions. Their initial proposal elicited skepticism from Clark's board, but Rachel had channeled her fears into preparation. Equipped with thorough research and compelling narratives from her community, she stood with Clark, comprising united front at their open session. "You're going to see how powerful our message is," she assured Clark as they entered the boardroom. The presentation began, And with her heart pounding, Rachel recounted not just numbers, but the stories of families like her own who had felt the suffocation of rising costs amid stagnant wages. She illustrated how local families were fighting to stay afloat, capturing the tension between capitalism and compassion. Each story she told resonated with the board members that day. What if your company becomes the leader in ethical property management? She asked, her tone firm but inviting. Imagine the loyalty you'd foster among tenants if they trust you to stand by them. As she spoke, Rachel recognized how every assertion bolstered her sense of belonging within this realm, one she once deemed reserved for others. The first few murmurs of agreement from board members echoed in her ears, turning the tide of once doubtful faces into hopeful expressions. Clark, observing Rachel's impact, began to shift his own strategies. Strengthened by her passion, he began to advocate for her proposals with newfound fervor. Weeks flew by, and Rachel's hard work began to bear fruit. They piloted their new affordability strategy in specific districts, reducing rent for families facing hardship while maintaining essential profits. This nuanced approach showcased that empathy could indeed coexist with bottom-line management. Positive feedback from tenants poured in, affirming their intertwined fates. Families smiled again, laughter returned to hallways, and Rachel felt the ripple of success coursing through her every action. The ultimate test arrived shortly after when the media caught wind of their initiatives. A local news station requested an interview. Would she publicly stand by her triumphs? The rising anxiety that accompanied the request reminded Rachel of her past, how vulnerability felt like an exposed nerve. But something vital had shifted within her. Where do I sign up? She declared with a smile, recognizing this as yet another breakthrough, another chance to amplify her voice. The anticipation electrified her, knowing she was not just sharing a story of a mother. She was weaving a narrative of transformation, resilience, and hope for many as they prepared for the segment. Rachel found herself face to face with the confidence she had achieved. The camera's red light shone, capturing her steadfastness as she articulated the impact of their agenda. Her voice resonated with authenticity. Each word reinforced her commitment to a principle she had unlocked within the conviction to advocate for change. This isn't solely about me. It's about families who deserve a fair chance. Any business can thrive by doing right for its community, she concluded, her heart swelling with pride. The response was overwhelming. Coverage spread beyond their local community, rallying support from various sectors. Rachel's story inspired others in similar predicaments, igniting discussions around compassionate business practices nationwide. Recognition soon followed. Clark's company received accolades from community organization awards for impactful change and ethics within property management. And amongst all this, a milestone etched in Rachel's persona, her name, began to emerge in local publications. An advocate, a leader, someone who conquered not just her fears, but also made a tangible difference. The acclaim was gratifying yet humbling. Rachel reveled in the acknowledgement, but understood its roots lay in her journey, the growth she experienced from insecurity to advocacy. She once feared that helping others would strip her of her safety. Instead, she discovered that lifting others could elevate her own path. Standing in her living room days later, as her children giggled in the background, Rachel felt empowerment surge through her. They were safe. Their home was theirs to nurture. The warmth of camaraderie replaced the coldness of isolation. Her transformation had solidified into an unyielding strength. She was no longer merely a single mom navigating a tumultuous life. She was a force of change, a recognizable voice amidst a crowd of misfits who had amplified her spirit. "Mom," her daughter called, breaking her reverie. "Yes, my love," she answered, an effortless strength in her tone. "You're a hero." Rachel smiled, overwhelmed with a deep, authentic fulfillment. The reflection of her children's joy illuminated the truth. She had achieved something profound, not just a renewed life, but a legacy of empowerment that they could inherit. This was more than survival. This had become a rallying cry for transformation, as her daughter pressed a small note into her hand. "Emblazoned with you are my hero." Rachel knew this wasn't an end, it was a beginning. A testament to resilience intertwined with opportunity. Now, as the sun set beyond the horizon, she felt the warmth of the moment settle within her, a foundation built on strength, certainty, and shared success. And so her journey continued, a burgeoning force born from struggle, now radiating hope and possibility for all those willing to stand and fight for better. This, she knew, was the moment to share that journey with the world. You need to subscribe now to catch more incredible stories of transformation. Leave a like now to support the algorithm that helps these journeys reach more people. Comment your thoughts and reactions about Rachel's inspiring conclusion and what it means for you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to understand the power of resilience and the importance of standing firm in their truth. Don't wait even one more second to share.